There was once a little boy who wanted to meet God. He figured, in his little boy way, it had to be a long trip, so he put a few Twinkies and a couple cans of root beer in his backpack and set out. He'd gone maybe 2 blocks at most when he saw an old lady sitting on a bench in the park. So he sat down next to her and pulled out a can of root beer and started drinking it. And he looked, and the lady looked kind of hungry. So he reached into his backpack and gave her a Twinkie. She smiled, and he thought it was a beautiful smile. He wanted to see that beautiful smile again. So then he reached into his backpack and pulled out a can of root beer and gave that to her. And she smiled again. And the two of them just sat there, never saying a word, just kind of smiling sometimes. Finally, he was getting tired, he realized, and decided to head home. And he'd taken only a few steps when he decided to turn around, and he ran back and gave the woman a big hug. And he said it was the biggest smile yet. Now, when the boy got home, his mom was kind of surprised by how happy he was and said, "What did you just do that made you so happy?" He said, "Mom, I had lunch with God." Before his mother could say anything, he added, "And you know what, Mom? She's got the most beautiful smile I had ever seen." Meanwhile, the old woman who lived with her adult son returned to her home smiling inside and out. And when her son saw how happy she was, "Mom, what did you just do to make you so happy?" And she said, "I ate Twinkies in the park with God." Before her son could say anything, she added, "You know, God is much younger than I expected." Now, of course, on one level, both that little boy and the old woman overstate their case, of course. On another level, there is truth to what they say. I know they speak truth because I, too, have had lunch with God in many informal ways. I've had very real moments with God. Today, Jesus tells us what's most important to him of all for us, that we love God wholeheartedly and, big word, and that we love each other. To Jesus, those two are inextricably connected. And really, for our growth and vitality and joy, we need to get those two things right. Like the little boy, he had this love for God, that he wanted to go find God, and then it showed up in his compassion for that older woman, and it was for both of them a meeting with God. Now we can, I think, misunderstand this connection between God and us in many ways. To demonstrate, one misunderstanding is to separate the two completely. God is out there somewhere, and we are down here somewhere. And, separate from us. And what we've got to do is pray and sacrifice so that God will somehow agree to sunder the heavens and come down to us, to visit us in any given moment, our situation. Nope, that's not how it is. Another inaccurate way is to look at it as if we are completely one with God, that we are God and God is us and we are the same. Nope. As one priest I know likes to put it, wrong again, banana brain. Instead, the truth looks much more like this. We are in God, and God is in us. God is more than us, and we are not fully God. But there is this place in each of us where we overlap with God, so to speak, where we are both ourselves and more than ourselves. And prayer, authentic spirituality, puts us in touch with that place where we are both ourselves and more than ourselves. And we draw on that. And it's crucial, I believe, for a meaningful life that we get this right. There is this place in us where we are one with God and God is one with us. Jesus proclaimed that with words and by his life. And I think he never was more clear about that than when in Matthew's gospel, when he said, "And I was hungry, and you gave me food." Not you gave food to those people, or I was thirsty and you gave me drink, or I was lonely or scared or in prison or heartbroken and you comforted me. And having just turned 70, I find myself a little more reflective than even normal on my life. And all of that brings me to this day and this time in my own life. On this weekend, when you so graciously celebrate my 70th birthday, albeit 20 years early, I remind you that, yes, like that young boy and old woman, I too have had lunch with God. I've chatted with God on the phone, taken a walk with God, sat across from God in a meeting. God has visited me in the hospital room, even played soccer with me, next to me in the backyard. And God was much younger than I expected, and also much older. And sometimes God was there in the nursing home or in a desk in a first or second grade classroom. Sometimes God had Down syndrome. In many ways, God visited me when I was lonely or scared or heartbroken. Occasionally, God showed up in that well-timed word of challenge that was spoken in love. Sometimes I heard God laugh. And in my own family, there's my dad, right? Sometimes I heard God laughing in the laughter. Sense God in my own tears or the tears of someone else. Often, God showed up in the compassion that welled up in my own heart. And in my own mind, I also picture you here. Because, yep, I've had lunch with God, and so have you. And I believe that you and I need to continue to train ourselves to see rightly, to see what is most real. God in the human heart, part of us, more than us. It was for me sweet to imagine that little boy earnestly saying he had had lunch with God and that God had the most beautiful smile he'd ever seen. And to imagine that old woman saying she ate Twinkies with God in the park and that God was much younger than she expected. What I'd tell you is in a very real way, they were both right.